welcome back to another week here on MWO Sports. Ryan Drury. I will be joined as always by Clarke and Steve Sabourin. Great show lined up as we chat with former Toronto Maple Leafs general manager, the youngest general manager ever, as a matter of fact, Gord Stellick, who is now a morning show host with NHL Network Radio on Sirius XM. We'll chat with Gord about the Maple Leafs, the North Division, the NHL overall, COVID problems, and much, much more. And then, of course, we will dig into the Super Bowl. Tom Brady wins a 7th. Trevor Bauer signs a massive deal in baseball. We'll touch on those topics with our buddy Kris Abbott from CoolBet coming up next. You're listening to and watching MWO Sports, brought to you by CoolBet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to another week here on MWO Sports. Ryan Drury, joined as always by Steve Sabourin and Kris Clarke, and we are very pleased to be joined by another great special guest, Gord Stellick, who's the morning show host on NHL Network Radio on Sirius XM. You can also catch him on The Fan as well, doing Leaf content. Gord, how are you?
Ryan, I'm great. How are you doing?
We're doing well, man. Sifting through this pandemic world together. And I wanted to ask you just off the hop what you've made of the play in the pandemic-riddled NHL world so far. There are a lot of guys on the COVID list. I mean, the NHL's had to postpone a lot of games. But just in terms off the hop on the play that you've seen so far, particularly in this North Division where the Leafs are really dominating, what have you made of the level of play so far?
You know, Ryan, and first of all, it's just been great, the sports. I mean, it's our escape, whether we work in the business or not. It's nice to see that and be able to enjoy the games. I've heard so many people saying how much they love the hockey. It's like the old 6-team NHL, even though it's 7 or 8 teams. So I really think it's been, for unintentional reasons, successful to create that kind of rivalry. Now, talking to Dave Poulin this morning from TSN, it is kind of now that, because he was mentioning, you've got some teams now with 4 games against the same opponent that, we're loving it, the intensity. But then say if you're Montreal or Toronto, you're saying, boy, it'd be nice to play Boston or Tampa Bay again. It's kind of great not being the Atlantic Division, that we don't have to face the President's Trophy winners and the Stanley Cup champions, but it'd be nice to kind of test that way. So as much as it's great, I think it'll have probably some negatives that way, but I'm loving the hockey. I'm loving the rivalries. It's got a bit of a playoff feel.
Or let's talk about our Maple Leafs, at least my Maple Leafs. Yours,
yes,
too, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they're now 5 points up on Montreal. Is this team as good as it appears? Should this team run away with this division? Let's start there, and we can talk about the Cup later.
Well, yeah, the Cup. Oh, yes. Well, Kris, it's funny because once you got in this division, you said, oh, great, no more Tampa Bay, no more Boston. So about finishing first is really reasonable. So you got the North Division it's anyone's division. So the Leafs should be the best team in the division. So they should come in first place. And then on the flip side, except for Ottawa, you're going to have 2 teams that are really pissed off they didn't make it, like 2 fan bases that are going to be really irate. You're already seeing it in Vancouver a little bit that way if they end up being one of those 2 teams. But, Clarkey, I love it that like last year, this is the way the Leafs we thought would play last year. Mike Babcock was going to coach them. They'd get to that next level in the regular season, and the playoffs would make or break it for Mike Babcock. They didn't get going. It was a dysfunctional year. It was a dysfunctional play-in series. And this year, they seem to, and I give Sheldon Keefe a lot of credit, Kris, about getting things right and, getting the new guys involved, give guys like Matthews Marner getting a little bit older. Like he said, it was an immature team off the ice. And I think what he meant last year, they didn't quite get what it took, that you got to go and set a certain standard and find ways to win regular season games to set the table to win in the playoffs. And they're doing that so far.
So do you think they've addressed the needs that we thought they needed to address in the offseason, getting tougher and harder to play against?
Yeah, it's kind of funny that for a couple of years they fought that, and Brendan Shanahan is the president, and that's the way he played. And it was funny that he supported that kind of style. You said, no, you just need a little bit. You need a little more grit. You don't need Fraser McLaren decking a guy on the opening game like happened years ago, whatever. And they did that. And then the other part, it was kind of a two-edged sword that you said, great, we got all this leadership. And you're going, great. They go, wait, why do you need all this leadership? Does it reflect on a lack of leadership in the past? And I think it did. So I think the new guys, Thornton, Simmons, even though they're hurt, but, and Bogosian and Spezza coming back, have added it, but also give credit to the younger guys to kind of rising to Sheldon Keefe's challenge. I think after Columbus, that series, they said, yeah, guys, we can't do this. This isn't fun. This is old. This is old all of a sudden, and we really got to get our bleep together.
You know what, Gord? It really seems to me over the last few games that they don't seem to be pressured, meaning you don't have Austin Matthews or Mitch Marner trying to do everything by themselves. Does that lend itself to the veteran presence in the dressing room and letting guys know that they have each other's backs?
Yeah, Steve, that's probably part of it. But here's the other part I like about this. Like, you look in the summer when they played Columbus, there were 2 games that Sheldon Keefe basically did when someone's coaching a 10-year-old hockey and they just want to win. They cut it down to 2 lines, right? They shortened the bench down to maybe 1 line. He had a couple of games. He only played 2 lines. He said, I'm getting nothing from my 3rd and 4th line. Like, I'm getting nothing. So this year he's kept moving guys in. And I mean, guess again, last night, great effort by the 4th line. It doesn't matter who comes. So I like the way that's been raised. And part of it, to your point, is those new guys coming in and they didn't like he put him in good spots. He put Joe Thornton on the first line. He gave the guys power play time. He gave Jimmy Vesey a chance on a prominent line. Babcock last year just kind of said, Tyson Barrie. I'm not big on him. You think he's going to succeed? Not bloody likely. Jason Spezza, I'm gonna sink this one before training camp even starts, and I'm gonna embarrass him on opening night by not even dressing him and all that. So the complete 180 that way. So I think the new guys help, but it's the old guys buying into it and getting the depth that's been huge.
We're chatting with the morning show host on NHL Network Radio on Sirius XM, Gord Stellick. And Gord, of course, you are a former general manager and executive yourself, one of the youngest GMs of all time, as a matter of fact, of Clarkey's beloved Toronto Maple Leafs. I want to pick your brain and put your GM hat on here. So far, I mean, I know we're still early in the season. We haven't hit the halfway mark yet, but what you're seeing out of Toronto, and there's a lot of positives, but you see Wayne Simmons go down, and he was adding an awful lot in terms of physicality and get up and go to the lineup. When you look at the Maple Leafs right now and you think about, hey, maybe we have an opportunity to go on a deep playoff run when we have to play teams from our division for the first 2 rounds, they could conceivably get to a conference final. What would you say this lineup still needs to potentially add in terms of trades, which is going to be an interesting thing this year with the whole cross-border thing? What do you see on this lineup that they would need to address to really, really push them over the top in your mind?
Now, Ryan, first of all, I consider myself still the youngest general manager at age 30. John Chayka was 28, but it's Arizona. Come on, it's Arizona. My 94-year-old Aunt Peggy could go in Arizona and run that team for a bit. So
she could.
Yes. So my joke has been that I was the youngest general manager in NHL history, and then 18 months later, I was the youngest ex-general manager in NHL history. So 2 records that I have. But it's funny as we get ahead to the playoffs, though, Ryan, and we think of, again, this, I don't say assumption, but your belief that, okay, they win 1 series, win 2 series, and now they're in the Final 4 again, which 1 Canadian team's promised. So at least that's a start. But what if they're the Tampa Bay Lightning of 2 years ago? Like, what about the phenomenal regular season they had and the ugly first-round exit to Columbus? And, of course, last year they bounced back and win the Stanley Cup. Like, what if that's the first round for the Toronto Maple Leafs? Like, what if they kill this division? And so I'm hoping they don't. I'm hoping that, again, like you say, what they do is it will transpires in the playoffs and that they're able to do that. And then, your point about, like, I think St. Louis showed it 2 years ago, whatever you want to call it, heavy hockey. You needed the heavy hockey, and the Leafs did not have the players for the heavy hockey. 4 lines of it to get through 4 playoff rounds. And this year, Wayne Simmons is an excellent example about that guy that gives you an option that way to include in playing heavy hockey.
Gord, I've flip-flopped on this topic, a dozen times in the last year or so, or even more. Freddie Anderson. He seems to be on his game again. He seems, when I see him and he's nice and quiet in the net, he's not flopping around and not chasing the puck. He seems to be really on the ball. Last night against Montreal, first goal went in, but then he just shut the door. He's in a contract year. Can this guy lead the Leafs to the promised land?
Well, he's lumped in with the other guys just as much, because I'm really bullish on Freddie Anderson. I love that trade. I mean, goaltending wise, the Leafs have not developed someone internally since Felix Potvin. They haven't. They haven't, and James Reimer was the best, and he was kind of the accidental one that just filled in when, Justin Pogge didn't work out or other guys did not work out that way. But Freddie has what ails the Toronto Maple Leafs. Like, you love those, you always talk like Elizabeth Manley back in 1988. I know I'm dating myself, but she wins a silver medal at the Olympics. She comes up, she was not expected to, which was very un-Canadian skating, because usually we win the world championships and struggle in the Olympics, but she just kicks ass. She had her best outing by a country mile and won the silver. So she, on the biggest stage, she had her best event ever. And that's what the Leafs have struggled with. And Freddie is a great example. Like we think of, hey, Boston Bruins, Game 7. Hey, why not have your worst game you could ever have in the first period? Just whatever, on and on and on. It goes to Game 5 against Columbus. So the games that you've really needed him to come up big, the money games, he hasn't done it. And that's what he's going to have to prove this season. The contract year is the contract year. I mean, it's going to be, there'll be goaltenders out there. There will be goaltenders out there. But I just think that's the next step. He's the guy that, think about when they played Ottawa and how Eddie Belfour or Cujo stole series. Like, the Ottawa Senators were a better team. And every year they went home crying. A big reason, because Gary Roberts kicked the crap out of them, but also goaltending. So that's the next level, Freddie, and he's one of many that has to show in the playoffs.
Gord, let's stretch it out a little bit from Toronto to some of the other centers. Montreal's performed well. Edmonton is starting to catch some steam. But when you look at the North Division as a whole, what is a team that you've been surprised by and a team that has been a disappointment?
Well, I'll start with Montreal still, even because Steve, last year when the pause happened, Montreal Canadian fans were still saying, we're going a couple of years away from the playoffs, right? And it's funny, they were, because remember the bubble was a little bit in doubt, they had to talk to some players, and Montreal was one of those teams. Montreal was not, despite how well they played in the bubble, they were one of the least keen teams to come back, because some of them probably thought they'd get their butts kicked and get out of there. And really, they were playing for no money in the summer. It was like, double the playoff money share, which isn't. So it's funny, they came in and they really just established where they could go to the next level. And again, a year ago, you ask any Montreal Canadian fan, Marc Bergevin made 0 good moves ever. And now the guy can do no wrong. And I love the way he's put this team together. Even a piece like Josh Anderson, when I say even that, because just, again, all those guys leaving Columbus is a little puzzling. But anyway, all those kind of things he's done. So I continue to be a little bit surprised and happy for their success. On the Edmonton, by the way, come on. If you got Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, I'll move Aunt Peggy from managing Arizona to playing. Come on. We got to get those guys to the playoffs. Like, how many years? What is this, your 4th 5-year plan? Anyway, whatever. That's they're lucky Connor McDavid has bought into it. What's it, minus 37 there today and all that. Disappointing team. And it's an interesting one, the Vancouver Canucks, because I know they miss Markstrom and Tanev, but Braden Holtby's a real solid goaltender. Nate Schmidt was a good guy to get back the other way. And they're just kind of in that kind of funk. So, and then people talk, is something a little bit amiss? Are there 1 or 2 players that are, you don't want to start pointing fingers who they may be, but Braden Holtby was glaring at JT Miller after that last goal there, and he's moved from a couple of teams, and there's, but just that kind of stuff seems to come to the surface when you're struggling. I just love their talent up front and their youth up front, and they're really right now in dire straits.
Gord, you bring up Vancouver, and I mean, I would agree. I think I'm extremely disappointed in them. I mean, I'm not a Vancouver fan. I don't have a dog in the race in terms of the North Division, but I expected to be way more entertained by the Vancouver Canucks. I'll ask you to put your management hat on again. What do you see, as the future of this team in the short term? Because I think Canucks fans are kind of sick and tired, much like Edmonton fans, of hearing about rebuilds, and we've got to wait a couple years. Jim Benning's been there for 7 years now. Is he going to still be there if they don't make the playoffs at the end of this year? And what do they do if they change direction?
Ryan, it's funny you say that. Jimmy Benning was an 18-year-old when I worked with the Leafs, right? And he's got the Aquilinis, who are pretty hands-on, emotional owners. So as a general manager, I check my call display, and I fear whenever the owner calls right now. I think if I'm Jimmy Benning, what gives? But it's funny. You can't get panicked into a particular kind of move that way. Sometimes it's just about, you've got to get out of it organically, and you've got to look at the positives that they played well against Toronto in that third game. They really did. And, you can flip that switch and get going. And again, if, like we look at Columbus, that right away, Patrick Laine comes there, and already John Tortorella is the hard ass about, putting him on the bench there. So in Vancouver, if something's amiss because I always, the big line, Ryan, is always, the dressing room is real. It's real. Beyond coaches, beyond general managers, whatever, about what is going on, what's not going on. And if there's something deep and dark, like, hey, Tony D'Angelo's out of New York, you think there's is it any coincidence that all of a sudden they're starting to play better? And the guys can say all they want, that we like them. Well, yeah, but you like certain people, but you don't want them on your team, after a point. So it's save for that, which Jim Benning or Travis Green may look to address. Otherwise, hey, it's not a tough division. Ottawa, you can kick their ass. And really, if you're on fire there, you're about as good as any team there, except for Toronto.
Gord, we worked together for 10 plus years, probably at the Fan, and I don't think I've ever asked you this question.
I don't remember.
You don't remember me? Do you have any ambition to be a general manager again?
By the way, Clarke, you got me. You didn't just work there. You got me in. You got me filling in, co-hosting Primetime Sports when Bill Waters was co-hosting with Bob McCallum. So I'm always grateful for that. It's funny about being on the management side. To answer your question, yes. So it's interesting with all that's happened with Brian Burke, who's everybody says they're a great friend of Brian Burke. Okay, so I'll add to it. Whatever, he's going to have a great funeral, I guess, with all the friends he has out there. But I asked the same question of Dave Poulin this morning, because there's a similarity there. And so to answer your question, the ship has sailed for me, because I came and all of a sudden it was weird stuff like doing a little bit on the Fan, doing that ringside show with Rick Hodge on the American Hockey League. And then sports media really started burgeoning and out of the sudden. So I was very fortunate to catch the wave with my second career. So I became a broadcaster. And, it's kind of like Craig Button is right now. Mike Feud is kind of going to face that. Can he get back in somewhere, or does he become a broadcaster? And Bill Waters, was a broadcaster, went in, went out. So I, and you know what, and whatever you're fans of it, whatever fan in any sport, we all love. Our passion is being a general manager of those teams we're fans of. So, I do miss the living and dying with the team. And then I also don't miss the living and dying with the team, and so, but if in a perfect world, if one kick had come out at it, but I look back and I said, like, I'm ridiculously fortunate, like the Toronto Maple Leafs, like everything sucks after that. Like people are coming out and say sports management, I'll work at Columbus and Carolina or Florida or Arizona. And I get it. That's what you should want to do. And I go, I'm spoiled. Like I'm Ernie the TV repairman's son, and I end up working with the Leafs through a series of events, and nothing compares, to me in sports media in the Toronto area as well. So that's where I'm really happy that it's here.
Just to stay on that topic for a second, I want to take you back to 1988, 89, and a guy who I got to know very well when I worked at Leafs TV as a scout for the Leafs. George Armstrong, of course, passed away a couple of weeks ago. I want to hear the story, Gord. You brought him in to replace Brophy, if I'm not mistaken, in that season. It must have been a wild time, and I never really pictured, I never knew George back then, but I never pictured him even wanting to be a coach since I talked to him in his later years. What was that like, talking to him and getting him to coach the Maple Leafs?
Well, he didn't want to coach the Maple Leafs, and Harold Ballard would only let me make the change of moving John Brophy if George Armstrong took it. So he did it as a favor and that, but it's as much Damian Cox and I. God, how many years ago was it? About 18 years ago now, we did a book on the 67 Leaf team. And it's a great book. I'm not saying just, because Damian's a great writer. It was a great collaboration in that. And I'm very, very proud of the finished product. I could remember it a little bit, and I'm passionate about it. And I talk to the players. Damian could be objective. He's a better writer. We took our turns about writing, but I got to chat with all of them, every single player. And I talked to the Horton family and the Sawchuk family. Those were the only two that had passed on then. To a man, they talked about the 67 team, but also the 4 Stanley Cups in 7 years. You don't win them without the goaltending of Johnny Bower and the leadership of George Armstrong. And so I'd always this kind of understated leadership. So I got to know him when I started working there part-time in the 70s. People don't realize that he was supposed to he coached the Toronto Marlies. He had those great teams with Mark Howe and all those. He was actually supposed to coach the Maple Leafs in 1977. And that's why they selected John Anderson and Trevor Johansson. They had 2 first-round picks. They selected 2 Toronto Marlies. And so it's a little-known thing. And, of course, he couldn't get a contract out of Ballard with the appropriate money. So Ballard got pissed, and it kind of just went, and Roger Nielsen became the coach. And then, as happens, Ballard makes your life so miserable that George left the organization and worked with the Quebec Nordiques for a number of years. So I was really proud and pleased because I'd run into him all the time to be able to bring him back. The expectation wasn't about him coaching, but he knew the Harold Ballard circus and how it went. And it wasn't the proper resolution for the team, but I can never knock Mr. Ballard, because if it was an unusual situation, there's no way I'm working there or I'm general manager. So I revered George Armstrong. He was a modest guy, funny guy, very proud guy, but did not like the spotlight at all. So he had a great life. And I was sad, but I smiled a whole lot when I reflected on George Armstrong memories.
We'll take a quick break here on the show, but stay tuned. We will be back with more from NHL Morning Show host on NHL Network Sirius XM, Gord Stellick, here on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co.
This is MWO Sports.
Gord, looking ahead for what the Leafs have to go through the North Division, if they're able to crack that, just want to tap your brain about the rest of the league and how they look and what fans can expect as the season continues its, I guess, shortened run.
Steve, what's interesting right now, and Toronto's kind of doing in the North, is the have and the have-nots, right? Like you've got. Like you look at the records of teams and you go, like what is this? They're playing like 900 hockey. Vegas, another example. And you look at the way Boston's playing and Tampa Bay's playing, and all these kind of teams. So it's I don't know if that's the way it's going to go. I mean, Ottawa, Detroit are where you thought they were. Are Los Angeles and Nashville going to join them, and Vancouver? As those kind of teams that way, but. For now, and I'll go back to Steve where I started, is it's not just the Canadian teams I'm loving the hockey. Like I had Jeff Blair say that to the other day. He's not a hockey guy. Chris Johnston is a hockey guy, but they both said, I'm watching more hockey I'm ever watching. Like I'm PVRing games, and I'm finding the same. So like the Boston Bruins, are they going to tie it again when they're 3 down in the last minute of play? That kind of intrigue. So I'm really loving watching all that's going on. So the marquee teams at the end of the year are Tampa Bay for sure. Vegas, they've talked about it. I think Colorado is that big mystery team. I don't think any Canadian team is viewed as including the Toronto Maple Leafs, is viewed as a favorite to actually win the Stanley Cup. I think it's one of those other ones. But I'm loving watching the usual suspects, and I guess adding Colorado to the mix as far as people that are picking teams to win the Stanley Cup.
Well, that'll make producer Adam very happy as we continue to chat with morning host on NHL Network Radio on Sirius XM, Gord Stellick, and of course, a former general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Gord, you brought this up earlier, and obviously Brian Burke leaving Sportsnet to go become the president of hockey ops for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and he joins Ron Hextall in, I would say, one of the weirder general manager swaps. I mean, it's not like they traded him, but he started in LA, he moves to his beloved Philadelphia Flyers. Things ended acrimoniously, and now he's back in state with Pittsburgh. First off, what did you make of the hires and of Jim Rutherford leaving? And secondly, just how attractive is that job right now? Because we all know about Sid, we all know about Gino. They don't have very good goaltending. They don't have any picks. They have by far the worst prospect pool in pro hockey. That's an awful lot of heavy lifting for these two guys. What did you make of the moves, and what do they need to do to get Pittsburgh in a position to start building back up again?
So, Ryan, you sound like Brian Burke, the broadcaster, and now he switched that the last 3 days. All of a sudden, everything's great in Pittsburgh, according to him.
Yeah.
He also says it's the greatest sports town in the world. I don't know. Has he been to Boston or Chicago or even Toronto? Anyway, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know
that's
about
Burkey. That's Burkey. So, first, Jim Rutherford was a real surprise, and it was good to hear it wasn't health reasons, but it was legit. He thought his power was being usurped a little bit, challenged, so he stepped away. They also thought, you know what? We do not want someone to be as powerful as Jim Rutherford. We want to do like most teams are doing, Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas in Toronto, like a general manager and a president. And I was very surprised about Brian Burke. Was not surprised about Ron Hextall. You know, it was a bitter, Paul Holmgren turned on him. They were buddies, and he turned on him, and that was, a real bitter firing. And Chuck Fletcher reaped the benefits, but Ron Hextall's template is still there. So he to me now, Ryan, is the guy that's in tough. Because to your point, I agree with all your points. I'm going to stick where Berkey was 3 weeks ago about Pittsburgh. You know, I know they want a parade right now. That's great to say, but I'm with you. That's going to be a tough animal. Berkey's case is easier because he's such a larger-than-life personality, and you know, people are thinking him buddies with Sid and doing. Well, no, this is like what he did in Calgary. You know, Calgary was not general manager, and he brought Brad Treliving in as the general manager, and Berkey was the president. Kind of oversaw it, and then eventually, you know, I wouldn't say Ward was welcome, but the position did, and that, and I can just see that being a bit more, that as much as he's getting as much media as Ron Hextall is right now. I mean, Hextall's going to be the guy. But I'm happy for Brian. I mean, we're going to miss him in media, but you know, and the other part is it's funny friendships. He's friends with so many people, and the Penguin owner and him were part of the negotiation team in 2012. They had the half-season lockout, and if you remember, Berkey got fired on the eve of the Leafs' first game in the 48-game abbreviated season. And what actually happened was in the summer, George Cope, who I think still is the head of Bell Globe, but anyway, with their ownership, he got mad at Berkey for whatever reason, wanted to fire him, and that was his right to do it. But the NHL said, well, hold on, he's with our negotiation team. It was a very small team, 4, 5, 6 people. So he had to stay for about 5 months, and that's why then, because it was curious when they fired him, but that's why. And one of the other guys on that was the Penguins owner, so he forged a positive relationship.
Gord, I want to ask you one more thing here before we let Clarkey probably ask something else about the Maple Leafs. I just want to know, in your time as a general manager and executive in hockey, your whole time watching this great game, you know, I know that we all kind of signed up for a weird year here. I mean, shortened season. We all are very familiar with pandemic life now. No fans in a majority of buildings. That's going to change soon. But I want to ask you specifically about a situation that we encountered as hockey fans on the weekend, and that was in Columbus. And I'm not talking about the benching. The goal that occurred in the Carolina-Columbus game, where it was clearly offside. The NHL came out after, said there was a miscommunication with the goal judge, and they ended up counting Vincent Trocheck's goal. But they took away the penalty for the challenge. It was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. Have you ever encountered a situation like that in your time as a manager or just being an executive? And what did you make of the situation? Because it was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen.
Well, you know, in my time, there wasn't video replay, so that thing wouldn't have entered into it. But, you know, first, I love Coley Campbell is a stand-up guy. Colin Campbell is a stand-up guy. And a worse one was, and he stood up for it the next day, and they changed the rules, was that Game 7, Vegas and San Jose, right? Where they, you know, and the next day he stood up, and they changed the rule that you have to review it. If you have a major, they get the chance to review it because those officials wanted to. I mean, it was a difference between Vegas potentially not winning the Stanley Cup, you know, this year. So this one was relatively minor the way it went. And I also like they didn't throw the junior guy under the bus. So it sounds like a perfect storm in that, you know, some person who's handling the microphone is probably a homer looking at it and made a comment which got picked up by the referees thinking it came from the war room. And then because we're in COVID era, instead of being able to, yelling at the guys in the headset, they're wiping them down, which normally they'd be able to get the referees back there. So I do agree in the intermission that as an olive branch, he said, we're going to eliminate the 34 seconds on the penalty because we made the wrong call. But there is that sanctimonious thing. Once the puck drops, does not matter. Once the puck drops. And that's why quite often I always, you see teams hustling to get that puck drop if they think something's a little dodgy. The goal is sanctimonious. And of course, Ryan, wouldn't you know, it's a 1-goal game, right? Isn't that the way life works? You kind of go after that. If you're Coldy Campbell or whatever, you're going, please make it a 5-goal blowout. I don't care who wins, but as Murphy's Law would be, it's a 1-goal game.
And it always seems to be against Columbus. Like, didn't they have something last year with the time clock or something too? It cost them a game.
Yeah. The clock froze on 0.4 seconds, and Drew Doughty scored an OT winner. I mean, that's just a tough.
And their goalie got injured.
Right.
That's what Tortorella was pissed about. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Salo, that's right. Clarkey, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to ask about COVID, and we're pretty good up here in the North Division. No games have been missed. I heard there's some rumblings west, I guess, right now. But Gord, there's some teams obviously in the States that are having trouble. Do you think they're gonna will they have to pare the schedule back? Like, do you know what's going on? And obviously they have a plan. I'm not asking you to tell me the plan because I wouldn't think you would even if you knew. But what do you think might happen?
Clarkey, first of all, what was the name of that furry animal, the ice show, whatever? Charles Barkley went one-on-one that. And I had him in studio, whatever, at your behest to get tickets for everybody, whatever. And he wouldn't talk, and he wouldn't, what's the name of the one-on-one, the big, the purple, Barney. Yeah,
Barney. He did my voicemail for home, and I had to get it off there because I had hundreds of people calling me because he did a personalized voicemail for me. But Barney. Yeah, Barney.
Yeah, but you said, I'm filling in for McCowan, and you go, look, Barney and the show's here, and we can get tickets for everybody. If so that I remember Charles Barkley went one-on-one with Barney on Saturday Night Live, so have some fun this way. So a regular guy like any of us comes in, nice guy, chats, but will not go out of character. So when we go back on the air, he's not where he talks like Barney. And we go nowhere. We got free tickets, but it was a long segment. Anyway,
you're ripping me or something here. What are you getting on here?
I got some of the tickets too, but I still have armpit sweat from that longest segment.
I know. You know what? Yeah. Hey, sometimes you roll the dice and you gotta. You know what? Like, let's talk about this for a second. When you're in radio and you roll the dice and you do something, the best thing is probably to stop it and get out of it. And I'll remember. To totally change topics, one thing that I did wrong at the Fan when I was the assistant PD is, you remember the Ben Johnson lawyers? We had them on the air and they were absolutely awful. And I said, we started it, we're ending it. That was a mistake too. You got to adjust, right? You got to adjust on the fly, and that's what I learned over time. But you learn things, right? You're going to make mistakes if you roll the dice and do stuff. But
it was fun. No, they were fun, and it was always theater of the minds that way. Now this is serious in 2021, as you mentioned, and will every team end up playing the 56 games? Good chance they don't. But the one good part, if you want to call it that, because keep in mind last year it went to winning percentage. Like, what didn't the Buffalo Sabres lose by 0.005%? So it did go to winning percentage. It's not like it's without precedent, but also the teams that are getting impacted are all in the same division, right? So there's a fairness there. Like, it would be worse if there was, one and then someone in the other division got impacted on the percentage thing because he didn't play each other this year, whatever. So the NFL finished their season. God bless them. The NBA and NHL did it in a bubble. Major League Baseball, they pulled a player in the World Series winning game. I mean, this is what the world is right now. And and there's a delay tonight, the Montreal-Edmonton game. And I believe they've provided enough runway that they'll get all the games in, I believe. But also, if there have some they can't. And I think at the end of the year, too, they'll look at games that don't matter so much. And things that don't matter if teams are really comfortably in the playoffs or really uncomfortably out of the playoffs. So they have that flexibility as well. So I'm fine with getting through it. They're doing the best they can. I think they're doing a great job. And and if it comes down to winning percentage, that's fine. They already did it.
You want to talk about fishing in Yellowknife now?
Yeah, go ahead. Share this Yellowknife story to end it off, Clarkey. Why not?
Well, no, Gord and I had a chance to go take part in a midnight golf classic. We had this guy who would always call into the fan that lived in Yellowknife and listened to us online. And he called one day and asked if we wanted to go up there. And Gord was the MC of the golf tournament, and I got to just tag along. And we went fishing, and I caught a big fish, and it's mounted in my basement. And we played golf in the dark. It was supposed to be light, but it was cloudy and it was dark. But we teed off at midnight, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, the longest day of the year, June 21st. I never thought I'd hear "Fasten your seatbelts." We're landing in Yellowknife, and it was so that was a 9-hole course, and it's artificial turf tee-off area, artificial turf greens, and then sand. And you have a piece of artificial turf that you take to put your golf ball on. So they gave us a couple of people to help because it was pitch black. Clarkey and I still have the black fly bug repellent on us. It would just so anyway. It was a fun night, but we were there for 3 or 4 days. So there were some okay parts, but it got a little long at the end. But the fishing trip was nice, and Clarkey landed the big one, like the old American Sportsman show with Kurt Gowdy or Henry and Italo, whatever it may be. One of those
in a canoe,
shows.
Ryan. In a canoe, we were in canoes. Anyway,
and you know what? It took up our freezer. After that, we had no ice for the mixed drinks and the beer because Clarkey's big fish took up the freezer. But anyway,
and I put it in my golf bag and brought it back. Yeah,
absolutely selfish.
And then we went on the air in the fan and got it mounted for free. Remember the guy Brain's
Jeff Brain. I told Clarkey because Brad Smith, Motor City Smitty, said he did a promotion at a guy in Orillia, Ontario, Jeff Brain taxidermist. And sure enough, like Clarkey has a nose for value, so do I. So we got connected with the guy and he got it stuffed. So there we go. Game, set, match.
Unbelievable. Jeff Brain, what a name. That's fantastic. Good for you, Clarkey. I've seen the fish.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. Well done. Gord, we really appreciate you doing this, buddy. We appreciate all the work that you're doing. Keep it up and stay safe down there. We really appreciate it.
You guys stay safe as well, and real pleasure. And Kris, you're a great friend. We go way, way back. And guys, it's fun. This is a real good show, a lot of fun. So anytime down the road, okay?
Absolutely. We appreciate it. You'll definitely be back. Friend of the show, mark it down. Keep us in the calendar. All right, we'll take another quick break here on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about baseball. Trevor Bauer signing the biggest single season deal in Major League Baseball history. And of course, we have to talk about the Super Bowl with our buddy Chris Abbott from CoolBet. Stay tuned.
This is MWO Sports.
Welcome back to MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co. Ryan Drury still alongside Clarkey and Steve Sabourin. We are, of course, joined as always at the end of the show by our buddy Chris Abbott from CoolBet. Chris, how you doing, buddy? How was the Super Bowl?
Hey guys, how's it going? Yeah, no, doing great. And the Super Bowl was phenomenal for me. If you wind back the tape, it'll sound like I knew what was going to happen before the game happened. So I'll take that. That doesn't always play out as nicely as it did for me in the Super Bowl, but the teaser hit. No questions asked. The Bucs money line had a little bit there. Gronk was a huge factor. I was talking about Antonio Brown all playoffs, that he would be a factor. I didn't know that his touchdown prop would also cash, so that was great. I didn't have that, but the guys who were, the freebies for Tampa Bay in Gronk and Antonio Brown and Leonard Fournette, they were all huge factors.
This is amazing that, just have a little bit of money on a game and you can make a crappy game exciting, can't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that happens all the time throughout the season. In fact, in the NHL, it's happening right now frequently in the Central Division because there's a whole lot of bad games being played in there. But it doesn't matter. It pays nonetheless. So, I agree. The Super Bowl was not that fun to watch. Even though my bets were winning, they weren't even in question. You didn't even get the adrenaline rush of is this or is this not going to happen? So, I completely understand those people out there who weren't enamored with the Super Bowl. It was all Bucs all the way.
Yeah, they Kansas City played probably the worst game I've ever seen them play in the Patrick Mahomes era. And I mean, the numbers bear that out. Lowest point total since he took over as quarterback. It's actually the lowest point total of his quarterbacking career. He never scored 9 or fewer points in college even, and it was the largest margin of loss in his entire career, including college. I mean, that poor guy was running all over the place. We know he had turf toe, but man, oh man, the impacts on that offensive line really showed. And like you said, Kris, and you're right, wind the tape back. That's why you watch this show and trust what Kris says. You had it, man. Tampa Bay was going to eke this thing out. And I mean, they didn't even eke it out. They dummied them by 3 possessions. And I actually took your advice. I had Tampa Bay on the money line. I had them to win and under 55. I mean, just about everything I bet on hit. And so I'll thank you for that. Your impression of the game and just what went wrong for Kansas City. I mean, of course, their offensive line played poorly, but man, they had some offensive players like Travis Kelce in particular that just played awful and gave them nothing.
Yeah, I mean, so I do think there's something to the fact that Kansas City was flagged an awful lot in crucial moments early on, and penalties really went the way of the Buccaneers in this game. I don't think that's really an argument to be made. I think that was quite obvious. Tampa Bay didn't take as many penalties, and it certainly helped at the end. But yeah, if your offensive line is just continuously letting the pass rush through, and we saw Mahomes, he playing, injured, for him to escape as much as he did and still get some of those throws away that, hit guys in the mask or were dropped. I don't put any of the loss on Patrick Mahomes, not at all, even though they did not score a touchdown, which I don't think, you could have predicted. Although I did see someone out there somewhere had picked the exact number of points for Kansas City at 9, and I think it paid like 30-1 or something like that, like a ridiculous bet. But yeah, it was a game where Tampa's defense dominated. I knew they'd be a factor. I didn't know they'd be as dominant as they were. But hey, and you bring a team that doesn't have its best offensive line, and you're in trouble. And it really is glaring. The linemen don't get enough credit for wins and or losses. But that's where the game is won and lost at the line of scrimmage. The playmakers get all the focus. But if you have an offensive line that's unable to do its job, that's going to be the result 9 times out of 10.
Well, Kris, it's interesting, too, because when you look at the build-up to the Super Bowl, Tampa Bay, I would argue, over on the NFC side, was probably down the list of making it that far compared to a KC, which was expected to be there. And you could just see the confidence through the playoffs of Tampa and even through the game at stages that once Gronk caught that first touchdown, they just had a whole weight lift off their shoulders.
Yeah, there's something to the mystique of Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski when it comes to these games. Like, they haven't won all those rings by accident. So once they are able to have that success, then it's not surprising to me that the team just felt probably invincible out there on the field, and everything they were doing was working out and going in their favor. You play this game, 10 times, it'd be interesting to see who wins how many games. But on that night, for certain, I don't think it was ever in doubt that Tampa Bay was going to win the game, especially, after the first quarter.
And that's all that matters at the end of the day, right? You show up to play, winner takes all. And old Tommy, old washed up 43-year-old dusty, can't throw the ball anymore, broken down Tommy does it again. And me personally, I'm a diehard Patriots fan. He has supplied me with plenty of great memories over the years. I don't think I've ever been so happy for somebody not winning for my team as I was for Tom. I think it's without question now, Kris, and I'd love your take on this, and fellas, you guys as well. I think there's no question he's the greatest football player of all time. If you want to talk to me about Lawrence Taylor and guys like that, I'd accept that argument. The other side of the ball, of course, no doubt about it, by far the greatest quarterback of all time. I don't ever want to hear the name Peyton Manning again. As much as I love Peyton, he's going to go to the Hall of Fame, of course, this year. I don't ever want to hear about Joe Montana. All due respect to him, Tom Brady's hero. Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Brett Favre. I don't ever want to hear these guys' names again. They all fall below Tom Brady. But it sparked an interesting debate here. And it kind of started after the 6th one. And it's crazy we're talking about 7. But now that he's done it without old Uncle Bill, and he's done it without the Patriot way, if you will, Do you buy into him being the greatest athlete in North American pro sports history? Because Kris, frankly, I don't. If you, Tom Brady, I think himself would tell you he's not a great athlete. Quarterback, absolutely. Athlete, I think that's a stretch. What's your take on that?
No, I don't think he's the best athlete on his team, or that he ever was the best athlete on his team. And I don't think there's any doubt that he'll go down as the greatest football player ever, but he's not actually the greatest football player ever. He's the best winner ever. He's the best clutch football player ever. He's arguably the best leader of men when it comes to being on the field ever. But I don't think he's the best physically gifted football player, not by, I don't know, he's even in the top 10, he gets it done. He gets it done. But in terms of athleticism, there's nothing that Tom Brady does that is remarkable athletically. But the way he is always there at the end of the day, the way he always steps up in the big moment, that says an awful lot. So is he the greatest to ever do it? Yeah, he's won the Super Bowl 7 times. But is he does he have the best arm? No. Is he the most accurate? No. But he's got it done. So I guess that's all that matters.
Yeah, there's something to be said for that. Guys, I'd be curious, Steve, I'll start with you. I mean, who would come to mind? I mean, it's a hard conversation to have. There's so many arguments you can make for so many guys. Sports are so very hockey's not like football, for instance.
Well, I mean, that's
mind for you.
Well, and that ends the argument there is, I mean, you take a sport like hockey, which is fluid. Football is a start and stop sport. You get to reset after every play, right? You get to recompose. Hockey is so fluid that the puck is always in play and moving back and forth. And there's different dynamics to all the sports. You could talk about reaction time. Well, the guys who hit a ball 425 feet out of a yard have to have the best reaction time in any sport. And that's just fact, right? That's a stopwatch. So yeah, Tom Brady, the best quarterback, absolutely. The way he's able to control the game, and it's proven by the number of championships, and the quarterback is a leadership role on a team. But yeah, from a greatest athlete of all time, I don't think that's something you could peg down at all.
Yeah, I don't think so. There's too many to name. I mean, you think Bo Jackson, Muhammad Ali. I mean, there's just way too many guys you could name across.
Well, what about Tiger Woods?
Tiger. Yeah, I don't know. He's a golfer. I don't know if I can he'd be in the winner category for me athletically. I don't know. Like when you're talking like Usain Bolt, Michael Phelps, Serena Williams. I mean, Messi and Ronaldo. I don't know. There's too many to pick, right? I mean,
here's the way I look at it. Put Tom Brady in the American Gladiators final challenge head to head against DK Metcalf and see who comes out on top. Put him head to head against Serena Williams and see who comes out on top. Probably Serena. So it's two different conversations, I think, right? I don't even think Tom Brady himself would tell you he's the most athletically gifted, but did he persevere? Was he a late draft pick? Is his attention to detail there? All those things, yes, check. But I think we're all in agreement that, from a physical specimen perspective, no, I don't think you could have him up there. Like you said, imagine if he did something against Usain Bolt when it came to a physical athleticism competition.
I would like to see the Tom Brady, Chris Clarke gladiator final. I think that would be a evenly matched competition.
I don't know. You might be giving Clarkey a wee bit too much credit there.
Was there any betting on the parade and what would happen there if the Lombardi was going to sink or not? Was there anything there, Kris? Or
well, had we known how it was going to play out, we sure would have had some betting markets on there. But I mean, listen, everyone's getting on Tom for getting drunk. Hats off to him. I love it. I think it's fantastic. Like that was awesome. He actually appeared to be human. What middle-aged white guy hasn't gotten wasted in Florida? So I think it's great.
I did too. Over under on avocado tequila shots he took. We'll set it at 9.5. Really quick, Kris, I want to ask you about Trevor Bauer signing the single biggest season payout in MLB history. He's going to get $40 million from the LA Dodgers next year. 3-year deal. He can option out after each of the first two. First of all, do you feel he's worth that? And second off, does that cement them as repeat champions for you, or who would you lay money on in terms of futures on a World Series next year?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question first. I mean, yeah, I think they're definitely going to be the team to beat. Their staff and their lineup is phenomenal. Do I think he's worth it? I think Trevor Bauer has Conor McGregored his way into an unbelievable payout through the use of social media, and I don't begrudge him for it. But I think if you look at, his numbers and his performance versus the persona that is Trevor Bauer, the Los Angeles Dodgers, and I guess whoever else were in the running, certainly overpaid for what they're going to get, between the white lines. I think that's how I view it. I'm a Trevor Bauer fan. I like what he does. He's a good pitcher. He is a good pitcher. But yeah, that's a big ticket. Considering I think they got Walker Buehler for $8 million. Wow.
Yeah, that's a bit of better business, I would say, for sure. Clarkey, go ahead.
Before we go, guys, we did our hockey pool, obviously, at the beginning of the year. And I did some stats up because I think we need to keep track of this.
Yeah.
Kris, your $200 looks pretty good for Steve finishing in last. But I think producer Adam has the stats. If we could, there they are. Boys.
Wow, she's tight.
Big Connor's helping me out. So Clarkey, 61 points. Drury and Kris tied at 48 and Steve at 45.
Wow.
So
I have 45 points.
Well, Austin's on fire, man.
Well, considering Eichel hasn't played since last century, and Aho has been, sitting out in canceled games, 2 major forwards, and I'm only 3 points behind. That's pretty good. Now, if only Freddie can get me a couple shutouts, I might climb the ladder.
I do think that's pretty good. I forget who I even had. Patrick Kane, for sure.
Patrick Kane, Nate McKinnon, and Sydney.
Okay, yeah. Well, Nate's been sitting out for a long time. Sid might be the Achilles heel of that roster because the Penguins. What's going on there? I mean, I know we're short on time, but I can see Malkin getting dealt now that the new regime is in. I could see that team getting blown up over the next 12 to 18
God,
months.
I don't know, man. I think that's what Jimmy Rutherford wanted to do, and they wouldn't let him do it.
Oh, you might be right. Yeah.
I don't know.
If it's one of them, I think it'll be Gino. I agree. And I'll make my excuses now. He's been letting me down. You never know what you're going to get out of Winnipeg, but Connor Hellebuyck's been good for me. And Ovi has been sitting out due to COVID reasons as well. So I'll catch up. Don't worry.
Markstrom
Ovi always goes on a heater.
Kris has Markstrom, and he's the only guy with shutouts of
That's right.
4 goalies. So
Shutouts are rare.
And Calgary's had some tough luck, I think, when it comes to results. I think they're going to be a team we all thought they'd be good in the preseason. I think they're still going to be there at the end of the day. But hey, Clarke, your Leafs, man, they're playing unbelievable hockey. The game against Montreal in Montreal the other night when they were up 3-1 and they steered that ship home. That to me, that was rare for the Toronto Maple Leafs. That game for the last 5-6 years goes to overtime for sure.
Right.
And
yes,
even the second Montreal goal was just really bad giveaways by Riley and Brody. Not certainly indicative of how they usually play. So I was really impressed with the way they brought that game home the other night.
Yeah, and the way Dermott's goal, the way they just dominated the offensive zone for what seemed to be over a minute. Montreal 3 or 4 times having the puck and the Leafs forechecking, just killing them. Even Willie Nylander did some good work there. So anyway, yes. So we'll take a look, I guess, monthly at the stats, or at least every time I'm in first place, we'll take a look at them.
Certainly, yeah, that's exactly how it works. Yeah, well, we're done pumping your Leafs tires. Clarkey's going to walk away 3 inches taller from this show, so that's always great news. Kris, we appreciate it, buddy. We enjoyed the Super Bowl, as boring as it was. It was fun to win some money, and hopefully that's a signal for people to start listening to your advice if they're not already. We appreciate it, buddy.
Oh, it's a fickle mistress. I go on cold streaks and hot streaks, as you well know. So hopefully this is the sign of something prolonged here.
Absolutely. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Am I right? All right. We will say goodbye for this week on MWO Sports, brought to you by coolbet.co. We appreciate our buddy Gord Stellick and, of course, Kris Abbott for joining us this week. You can listen to this show Fridays just after 6 on CKNX AM 920 and stream it on cknx.ca. Unless the Leafs play at 7 on a Friday night, we will start at 5:30, leading into Leafs pregame at 6:30. We're on YouTube now as well. You can find us there. Follow us on social media at MWO_sports. And of course, you can find the podcast on all the best podcast apps. I'm Ryan Drury. That's Clarkey. That is Steve Sabourin. Remember, you can also watch the show with our friends and producer Adam, the Colorado Avalanche fan, Friday nights at 8, Sunday nights at 9 on Whiteman TV. We'll see you next week.